Good morning to Ceann Comhairle. Minister, as you're aware, there is a resolution being debated in the United Nations General Assembly about Palestine's nationhood. And when the Taoiseach was appointed, who is now Minister of Foreign Affairs as well, he said he would lead the charge in recognising Palestine's full statehood. It was the late Brian Lenihan, when he was Minister for Foreign Affairs, who on behalf of the Irish people originally supported the Palestinians' request for statehood. And I have to say it's very, very disappointing that it would appear that the USA has decided to veto the Palestinian bid. But what I think is more disappointing is that the Taoiseach appears to be supporting President Obama's stance on this issue. And that he is saying that there should be re-engagement between Palestine and Israel. And I'd like maybe if you could clearly outline the change in thinking of the Taoiseach and what the present government's position is on this matter.
Minister.
Ceann Comhairle, the position of the government has been stated that this government supports an independent, sovereign Palestinian state. That view has been reiterated more recently than yesterday by the Taoiseach in the United States. The Taoiseach is due to speak to the General Assembly on Monday and to set out a comprehensive statement of Ireland's position on this and other matters, including matters of international peace and the Irish Initiative on Hunger. There are negotiations ongoing right now on foot of the application of Palestine for recognition. Ireland, as I said, supports the position that there should be a Palestinian state and is working in consort with our European colleagues to see if we can find unanimity in achieving that objective.
Thank you, Minister.
Further ask the Minister, will we be voting in favour of recognition of a Palestinian state in the United Nations General Assembly? Because I think for us not to do so, with our history and the way we had to seek international recognition of our republic when people were refusing that recognition, it would seem to me to be inconsistent. And I think that you could look to the very strong words of your own presidential candidate, my former colleague Michael D. Higgins, who no doubt will be able to advise you on the need to take a strong, independent stance on this issue. And I would like clarification whether we'll be voting in favour of the resolution to recognise Palestinian statehood in the United Nations General Assembly. A yes or a no, and that would be helpful.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
I join with you in my support for Michael D. Higgins and his principal position on this and so many other issues. Michael D. has a long-standing tradition in the area of human rights and on international policy. And he has, in fact, informed my own party's opinion over years in relation to these matters. It was from a related position that the Taoiseach, representing Ireland, is to the forefront in seeking to have agreement across all nations that the long-awaited independent sovereign state of Palestine would have international recognition. It's early to answer your direct question. It is too early to say what will be the outcome of those. But there is an expectation, I understand, from New York that a position will be acceptable to all, and that hopefully will emerge in the next day or two.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy O'Quailon on behalf of Sinn Féin.
Ceann Comhairle. Minister Howlin, last night the government deputies voted down our Sinn Féin motion defending the ESB as a key strategic company in public ownership. And not once, but actually twice, the Labour Party deputies in this House voted for the partial privatisation of this vital state asset. And that is absolutely the case. So how can you reconcile your voting position and your stated intent over the months ahead with the clear pre-election promise that Labour made in its manifesto for the election in February of this year, when you stated Labour is committed to the concept of public enterprise and is determined to ensure that semi-state companies play a full role in the recovery of the Irish economy. Labour is opposed to short-termist privatisation of key state assets, such as Coillte or the energy networks. And make no mistake about it, with ESB privatisation, you are implementing the IMF EU ECB deal that you have already denounced in the not only prior but throughout the course of the general election in February. I'm sure you're well able to answer this question yourself, Minister, and maybe you would ask the cacophony here in the background to leave off for the moment. Labour then pledged, let there be no mistake about it, Labour then pledged to renegotiate the IMF EU deal to refocus on growth and on job creation. To refocus. Now, how can the sale of the ESB be anything other than the short-termism that you have already condemned? And in the debate on Tuesday, you yourself, Minister Howlin, stated that you accepted the sale of state assets was not a traditional Labour policy and that in normal times we would probably not be proposing the sale of state assets.
Thank you, Deputy.
Minister Howlin, Minister Howlin,
please,
can you explain the position that you put forward to the electorate in February? You stated you couldn't support the Sinn Féin motion because we're not living in normal times.
Thank you.
Who are you kidding? What normal times applied in February when you presented your manifesto commitment to the Irish electorate? What has changed over the 6 months since that you have now been in office?
Minister, without interruption, please.
I'd like to address full square the number of questions Deputy O'Quailon has posed. Let me start with the last one. What has changed in the last 6 months? Fundamental things have changed. A new government has been elected, and we've moved away from the abyss that faced the two parties on entering government. We have renegotiated the pledge we made. We have begun the renegotiation, and I've said repeatedly, and other ministers, that the renegotiation of the bad deal that was struck by our predecessor government was not an event but a process. We've engaged relentlessly since entering government to renegotiate that deal with, quite frankly, remarkable success. In the first renegotiation, you don't want to hear. I know you don't want to hear.
Stick to Palestine, lads.
It suits some people. It suits some people for the country not to make progress. But this government is determined to make progress.
Thank you.
So in the first renegotiation, we provided £500 million for a jobs initiative that is having fruit in the tourism sector. We allowed an additional year to reach our fiscal target of 3% of GDP from 2014 to 2015. We've begun the negotiations to ensure that any resources that might be leveraged from the sale of state assets could be used for productive purposes, which was implacably opposed by the Troika in the beginning and signed off that it could only be used to retire debt by the previous administration. In the second round of renegotiations, it was agreed with the Troika that they would look at a case-by-case basis for reinvestment of any deleveraged money from the sale of state assets to create the next generation of state jobs. So to answer your second question, are we still in favour of using the state as a resource for job creation? Yes. That's what we're going to do. We are going.
Sorry.
You see, it is the economic policy of Deputy O'Quailon's party to bankrupt the country, to renege on the sovereign deal done, and to imagine that 18 billion euro, which is the deficit we have this year, 15 on current expenditure, 3 related to bank recovery, that 15 billion that we need to pay guards and teachers and nurses and doctors across the country can be magicked up out of some place. But the people are not fools, and they understand the fantasy of that. So let me finally say in relation to the ESB itself.
Thank you, Minister.
We did make a reluctant decision in terms of privatisation because that was the commitment in both the Memorandum of Understanding, which goes well beyond the quantum agreed in the programme for government, and we're seeking to have the agreement of the Troika to use that for productive purposes. So that will be yet another vehicle available to us to bring the country from ruin, where we found it, to prosperity, where we intend to leave it.
Thank you, Minister. 1 minute, Deputy O'Quailon.
Well, I have to say, first of all, Deputy Howlin, that the only thing that has changed are the names on the parties in coalition and the faces in the ministerial offices. Nothing else has changed a whit since the general election and those in power prior to it. You have already admitted, have you not, that the IMF, the EU and the ECB want the proceeds of the sale of ESB to go into the black hole of the banking debt. And you have already admitted, certainly, that your alleged plan to use the proceeds to aid job creation cannot proceed without the approval of that Troika. So not only are you selling off a chunk of the ESB, you are doing it without any guarantee that the proceeds can be put to real and productive use in terms of job creation. Is it not time now to admit, please, Minister, that once again, as historically has been the case, that the Labour Party and coalition has become the limp tail of a rabid dog, and that it is Fine Gael who are dictating the pace and are going forward with their particular agenda, and you once again are absolute failures in trying to put any brake on their intent? Will you now admit that to the people, or will you now get the backbone to stand up and to support the manifesto and the commitments that you made but 6 months ago to the electorate?
Thank you. Minister. Now, would you give the Minister 1 minute, please, to reply in quietness, please? Thank you.
I continue to be impressed, as always, by Deputy O'Quailon's rhetoric, but it's completely empty, as you know. And don't treat either this House or the people as fools. They know fundamentally. You don't want to hear. I know you don't want to hear.
Please allow a reply.
The problem is, we do have an extraordinary debt to pay. Sovereign debt brought to this nation by the previous government, voted in this House solemnly and supported by your party. You voted on the night. You voted on the night to guarantee the banks. Your current spokesman. You don't want to hear the truth. You can't bear the truth.
Mind your blood pressure, please.
Deputy O'Quailon can't bear the truth, but the truth is inescapable. You voted for that debt. You placed that burden on our backs, and Camcorla, the current spokesperson of Deputy O'Quailon's party on finance, voted for it in the other House, and said in doing so he was donning the green jersey. So we are faced with the reality. We are determined to hold strategic state assets in majority state ownership. We want to deleverage money that we can't manufacture from thin air to create new jobs and bring hope to people. We're not caught in blind ideology, but we are determined, as I say, to bring economic prosperity so that when we leave office, we will be on an upward trajectory, not a doomed trajectory.
Thank you. Now, could I have a bit of order, please, for Deputy McGrath? Thank you.
Thank you, Cancorda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cancorda, can I remind Minister Howlin that his colleagues in government also supported the bank guarantee. Now, in relation to my question, Minister Howlin.
Sorry, could we have a bit of order, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'd like to, Cancorda. I'm always with the people.
eating into your
The people
valuable
are
time
sovereign,
here.
and I always suspect
Would
that
you
there
please
is of the
proceed,
people.
Deputy? Come on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Cancorla, can I just to change the tone of the question just for a minute or two?
Please
no,
do.
seriously.
Yeah.
First of all, Minister, I would like to raise a very, very sad and serious case on the death of the 2nd of February 2002 of Shane Toohey from Derry Cooley, Clara, Tullamore, County Offaly. Shane was a young turf cutter, was 23 years old when he went missing after a night out and was last seen at 4:20 a.m. The Garda investigation quickly concluded that foul play was not suspected, and also the inquest found that he had drowned by immersion in cold water. Now, the reason I raise this today in the House is, however, other evidence has emerged and major concerns have emerged about Shane's death. So the family have asked me to raise this case with you, Minister, and ask you and the Government some questions, and if you'll support a full investigation and inquiry on this case. First of all, Minister, I'd like to ask you, first of all, if you're familiar with the case and if you have any information at all in relation to the background of the case. Secondly, I'd ask this State and the Government to examine all the new evidence, particularly the wealth of new evidence that's given rise to a suspicion of foul play. Shane was verbally and physically abused by a group of men in the months before his death. And can you find out, or can any new investigation find out, if it is correct that witnesses have said that the abuse continued on the night of the death? Are you also aware, Minister, that the initial Garda report could have been more professional and that it failed in a number of respects to follow standard procedures? And so my question, Minister, is why do they still hold on to the conclusion that Shane's death was accidental or suicidal, when there is now genuine evidence that Shane was struck by somebody or by a car door? And my final question, Cancorla, is will you support a call by the family for a proper full investigation which will include this new evidence? Thank you, Cancorla.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
I have to tell the Deputy that I am aware of the case. The family contacted me some years ago about this matter, when I was just a spokesperson of my own party, and also contacted the then leader of the Labour Party. And we jointly sent a letter to the Garda Ombudsman at the time, asking for an investigation outlining some of the matters that you've put. It is a worrying issue, and on foot of the Deputy raising it, I will ask my colleague, the Minister for Justice, to review the papers.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
I want to just put on the record of the House my deepest appreciation to the Minister for his response, because I know the family will be very, very happy about that from a very, very sad case. But can I just also ask you, in relation to the investigation itself, like in that little town, there's a remarkably high number of sophisticated CCTV cameras dotted around the town. And can the investigation find out why these tapes disappeared and where they are now? My second question in relation to will any new investigation look at the new evidence of Gregory Davis, an American forensic pathologist, who said that the case should remain open with the manner of death of undetermined and with a strong likelihood of suicide? So finally, Cancorla, will you, Minister, support? You've said you'll support the family's request, so I fully appreciate that, and I hope that the family will be satisfied with it. Thank you, Cancorla.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Clearly, I'm in no position to judge any of the facts, and I don't want to preempt any of the issues that the Deputy has brought to the attention of the House. What I've committed to do on behalf of the Government is to ask my colleague, the Minister for Justice, to review the papers and see what's the next appropriate step to take.